Our next presenter is going to be Christian Harris, and you're going to be presenting us with the safety and risk success framework.
Hi, everybody. Let me share my screen. Is that working for everyone?
Yes, it is. We can see it.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Great to be here today. I'm going to be talking about a formula that I've put together, a framework called Safety and Risk Success, which I think will be helpful as a way of some principles, as a way of thinking about how to drive safety and risk management forward within your businesses. Bit about me. I'm the founder of a business called Slip Safety Services, and I've been working in the field of safety and risk for over a decade now. What we focus on is prevention of slip, trip, fall type accidents, and typically clients see at least 50% reduction in those kinds of accidents following through the methodologies that we teach them and help them with. And we do a lot of work with insurance companies, with law firms, and with brokers as well. So that's how we get a lot of our work. So a lot of my perception of this is coming in from that legal, that insurance angle as well, which I think is giving a slightly different perspective perhaps than you might get from a pure health and safety professional. Just to give you an idea of some of the things, some of the successes that we've achieved across different sectors, we've been able to quite significantly reduce the number of accidents and claims in the field of slips, trips and falls, from train stations to leisure clubs and shopping centres and all that sort of thing. So just a bit of proof on the pudding that I've got some knowledge in this area. So it's been an interesting year, to say the least, 2020, but I think with the pandemic, what that's done for us as safety and risk professionals is it's actually moved our area of expertise right to the top of the agenda for boards. You know, everybody is now thinking about safety and risk much more than they ever were. So this is a time for us to capitalise on it and really start to make sure that we stay towards the top of the agenda rather than falling back down, which sometimes can happen when the day job gets in the way. And over and above COVID, there are a few trends that are driving what's going on as far as I see it. This is primarily from a UK perspective in terms of some of the stuff, but we've got claims culture increasing, and actually in times of recession that we're coming into or expecting for next year, claims volumes typically go up. There's a hardening insurance market. So if you don't know what that means, basically the insurance market works in a cycle. You have a soft market where prices go lower because there's much more competition of insurers in the marketplace. We're currently in a hard market where insurers are being much more picky about what they're willing to insure, and that's driving prices up because of the supply and demand tension. We've seen changes in the UK which have made a big impact in terms of criminal sentencing for health and safety as well. So we used to rarely see fines of £1 million or above, whereas now those are commonplace. The climate emergency is driving some fundamental shifts in how we need to deal with managing safety and risk in our business. There's been a professionalisation of procurement, which has caused some challenges. I would suggest over recent years we're being a lot more cost-centric rather than outcome-centric when it comes to decision making. There's some interesting things around demographics. So as the population gets older, but healthier in older age, we're more and more active. So we could be working later in life, we could be enjoying leisure activities later in life, but it doesn't matter how active we are. If we're 65 and we break a bone, the recovery from that, and therefore the cost of that, is going to be much higher than if we're 25 and that happens to us. And then there's obviously the whole COVID world from the perspective of the economy and cost cutting and businesses struggling. So there's a lot of big trends driving what's happening in this space at the moment. So we're talking about success in safety and risk, and I see that as being placing safety and risk as a fundamental driver of business performance, and business performance meaning fewer people getting hurt, lower costs, and more opportunities to do other things and have a successful business. But so what's getting in the way? I think there are 7 things. So we spend a lot of time thinking about things that are too intangible, so we can't measure them. We often take a bit of a superficial approach, as Eddie just said, talking about occupational safety. We should be thinking about elimination, but often we just don't. We go much lower down in the hierarchy of controls. Many companies don't know the total cost of risk. If we don't know the cost that we're expending on safety and risk, how do we know what we can afford to invest to solve that problem? And often the numbers that are being spent are much, much greater than we would otherwise think. The day-to-day gets in the way, so we don't often work strategically. We're caught up in dealing with accident investigations and struggling with our daily work. There's a lot of issues around silos and not such great cooperation, both internally and externally, because there's all sorts of stakeholders that we should be working with when it comes to managing our risk. There's big improvements we can make around clarity and communication and engagement. And I think sometimes we have the wrong mindset. So we want to get things right, but often we're better off making some progress and getting things directionally correct rather than waiting and procrastinating a bit until we've got everything perfect. So that's some of the challenges I see. So how do we respond? How do we respond to that? And I like to think of this as imagining I've got a friend I live in London. If I've got someone in Sydney who calls me up and says, I'm struggling to get safety and risk on the agenda, or I think there's things we could do to improve this in our business, which will drive some good outcomes. I get it, I'm on board with the principle, but where do I start? Now, I can't physically do anything to help that person because we're on the other side of the world necessarily, but what I can do is share some principles and some steps that they can think about, and that's what I'd like to share with you guys today. Just some things to get you thinking and a bit of a process that you could maybe look to go through and see if that helps. So that I've put into an acronym called SUCCESS. So we'll run through each of these in turn. So the first S, is to set quantifiable inputs and outputs. So I like to think about this, that you've got to look at leading and lagging. You've got to look at measurable and manageable indicators. Everybody's going to be managing at least most safety outcomes, I would suggest. We all know how many accidents we've had, but we often see a lower level of measured or measurable inputs, activities that are driving these outputs. So then we've only got half the picture. Culture is a good example. So the image here, can you measure culture? Very difficult, very fluffy, very important. I get that, of course. And I think for me, culture is about communication and engagement and partnership. And I think those things you can start to measure and manage. So just think about what gets measured, gets managed, and thinking about smart objectives is the way that I would approach this. U is for understand root causes and avoid the superficial. So in my field of slips and trips, I see a huge amount of superficial thinking. So, we'll put a yellow sign out and that will solve the problem. Well, no, it won't. You need to be really going into the detail here. Just in that one topic, there's a huge amount of depth that you can go into. There are 6 reasons somebody could slip over. Most people only know 1 or 2 of them. If you had a campsite by a river and you woke up one morning and you came out of the tent and there was rubbish on the riverbank, you'd pick it up and put it in the bin. But if you woke up the next morning and the rubbish was there again, and again and again and again, you'd get pretty frustrated. And so you go upstream to try and fix the problem, eliminate the problem at its source. And we don't see that happening enough when it comes to these occupational safety issues. I think the other thing to say is that, as the sort of maxim says here, if you're managing safety in a business, you've got to have such a breadth of knowledge. You've got to be a mile wide, but therefore, if you're a mile wide, you can only ever be an inch deep, and that's no way on its own to manage the complexity of this topic within a business. So you do need more depth in certain areas, and that's where people, specialist people, can help, or bigger teams can help, whatever it might be. C is to calculate your total cost of risk. So here in the UK, the HSE suggests that the total cost of an accident is somewhere between 8 to 36 times the insured cost. So if you have an accident, you probably know the size of the insurance claim, if that's going to have a claim associated to it. But often people don't know the true cost. So all of the hidden things like the investigation time, but even things like reputation, which is obviously your biggest asset, you could easily argue. So we need to know what these true costs are for us to be able to put together a business case to invest in prevention, and obviously prevention is better than cure. Just as a thought exercise, what would your approach be to health and safety if you had no insurance and every single pound of cost was coming out of your bottom line? I suspect it would be a little bit different, and if it were different, then that tells you something that you should be considering. The next C is creating a performance flywheel. So I think we've got to get momentum here, and we've got to get constant movement, because otherwise the day-to-day will stop us from achieving what we need to. And I think this is also really about engaging with our people, getting feedback from the shop floor all the way up to the boardroom and everywhere in between. So I would deem this as being a constant cycle of feeding back, learning, empowering people to make decisions, and improve, going round and round and round on that cycle.
Dear Administrator, can
you hear me? E is for engaging with partners. And here, what I'm talking about is the whole breadth of partners. So partners could be your work colleagues, they could be people in other departments of the business. It could be your insurer, your broker, your lawyer, the regulator, trade unions, suppliers, customers, kind of everybody that touches the business. We should have a holistic risk partnership with them, because it's in everybody's interest to improve safety, to reduce risk. So we need to try and consider that, think and act in that way. The opposite would be to be quite insular, and then we end up with scenarios such as, we've always done it that way, or we can't overcome these hurdles, and that's when we get blockages, and that's when we get, the same types of accidents happening again and again, the same incidents happening again and again. This is particularly important when it comes to defending insurance claims. So there's a huge amount of work that can be done in partnership with your insurer, with your broker, with your solicitor, that many companies just simply don't do, to put yourself in a better position to defend any claims that do arise. We can't expect to fully eliminate every single accident and every single claim, but we can put ourselves in a position with engagement with our partners to be able to defend many more claims than we have to pay out. The penultimate S, spell out the consequences, both good and bad. So we are if we're having that partnership and that collegiate approach, we're all working together towards a common goal, and we need to celebrate our successes on the way. I think a lot of the time people don't celebrate success in this area, and they certainly don't celebrate it enough, because every single success, has a benefit to people in the community, the business at large, the partners, the suppliers, and so on and so forth. But equally, we need to have the kind of stick as well. If something goes wrong and it's a kind of a bad apple scenario, we need to those people need to understand that there are consequences in a negative sense to their actions as well. But I mean, a high performance team is all about feeling safe and secure that their hard work will be rewarded and will be backed up by the other members of the team. So it's really important that we have good communication and celebration of the successes on the journey that we're all taking together. And the last S is start quickly, improve gradually, perfect never. And this is a mindset one, really. So I would say that risk is kind of like an infinite ocean. So we can never be finally there. If you consider that, whenever you come on board to a new company to be in charge of safety, there's always things you can improve. But often when people leave a company, they think they've kind of made the improvements that they can make. But there's always things we can do better. So look at it, understand it as that, and accept it as that. So we can never be perfect, but we want to be moving in the right direction. We want to be moving all the time. So trying to reduce some of the blockers that we talked about before will help us with that. And I think the other thing is we need to have the right mindset when it comes to just cracking on with it, just getting on with it and not procrastinating. So I'm a bit guilty of perfectionism and procrastination, and you've got to accept that you can't be perfect. Good is a good starting point, and let's improve from there. So I think you could easily be overwhelmed by trying to manage this topic, and we can't, as I said, in most cases, realistically expect to achieve zero harm. So let's just crack on and let's just try and get things better as quickly and as efficiently as we can.
Thank you, Christian. I think that concludes it.
Oh, I've got a couple more if I can.
Okay. I thought when you took that pause, I said, okay, maybe that's it.
No, I was just letting it sink in. So why am I passionate about this? Just to sort of start summing up. So I really believe that good safety and risk management powers good business, and I think business leaders should be. We as safety and risk professionals need to be getting this message across to business leaders, because the evidence is that if they grab the bull by the horns and they run with this and they really invest in these areas, their businesses will improve, they'll make more profit, they'll have more productive teams, etc., etc. And it works. So there's a very famous case which you guys might be aware of a business called Alcoa. Paul O'Neill became the CEO in 1987, I think, and he had a very singular focus on safety. That was his number one priority. Everything he did was all about driving safety. He was CEO for getting on for 15 years, and during that time they improved their safety performance by 90%, but they increased their profits by 7 times. So they went from 200 million of profit to 1.4 billion of profit, and he did say that was all driven by focusing on safety, getting risk management right, and then all of the positive outcomes spilling out from that are what produced the financial success. So 3 things that we could do if you're interested in joining me on this journey. Connect on LinkedIn. I'm very active on there, as Eddie knows, so always putting stuff out. I've got a podcast which comes out weekly called the Safety and Risk Success Podcast. So you can find that on the various podcasting channels. And I'm always looking for guests to come and share insights as well. So if anybody's interested in that, please let me know. And then I've recently just launched a scorecard, which is like an online diagnostic all around these topics of safety and risk success. So takes you about 5 minutes to complete. You log in, you answer a series of questions about your business, and it'll give you a score for each of the 7 factors as to where you are. So summing it up, really for me, with an example of a client that we worked with. So this was a client in the leisure sector. They operated gyms and with lots of swimming pools, and therefore they had a lot of issues around accidents. So we managed to help them working through this kind of framework to reduce their accidents significantly, and their claims fell from, on average, they were getting 1 a week to 1 a month. So that's kind of an 80 odd % reduction. What did that do for them as a business, though? Of course, it's great to be safer. Well, actually, what they saw was that they, by working on safety, they improved their sales and they improved their profitability, of course, because they had fewer accidents and fewer costs. They also massively improved their staff morale, and they were able to reallocate some time and some hours to some of the charitable work that they as a business were really passionate about, because actually they saved a huge amount of time dealing with accidents, dealing with claims, and just the general faffing around as a result of accidents. So there's all sorts of hugely powerful benefits, which I know you guys know, that come off the back of getting safety and risk management right, and that's what I'm inspired to push for. Thank you very much.